The Crown had opinions. This was not how the Stavran territory's governance described the phenomenon. The governance described the phenomenon as the Crown's resonance protocol, the specific theological mechanism by which the artifact confirmed or denied the king's significant decisions through the particular quality of vibration that the Crown produced when placed on the king's head during formal declarations. Resonance meant approval. The Crown vibrated, a low, warm hum that the king felt in his skull and that the court could hear if the hall was quiet enough. The vibration was the artifact's confirmation that the decision being declared was aligned with whatever quality the Crown measured, which the theology described as the territory's essence, and which 700 years of kings had experienced as the specific sensation of an ancient artifact agreeing with them. Silence meant denial. The Crown sat on the king's head and produced nothing. No vibration, no hum, the specific inert quality of an artifact that had been presented with a decision and had declined to endorse it. Most decisions produced resonance. The Crown approved governance decisions, military decisions, diplomatic appointments, the specific range of institutional declarations that the king's authority required confirmation for. The Crown was, by historical assessment, an agreeable artifact. The Crown approved most things. The Crown had opinions about mates. This was the specific quality that distinguished the Crown's function from ordinary governance confirmation. The particular intensity of the Crown's response to mate declarations. The specific phenomenon that the theology described as the Crown's primary function, and that every king in the Stavran line had experienced as the artifact's most significant expression. The Crown chose the Queen. Not the king, the Crown. The king could propose. The Crown could deny. 700 years of mate declarations had established the specific precedent that the king's proposal and the Crown's approval were both required, and that the Crown's approval was the one that could not be overridden. Alpha King Hadrian Veronin was about to propose. The Crown was about to have an opinion. Chapter 1. The proposal had been engineered for 11 months. Not by Hadrian alone, by the council, the diplomatic corps, the specific institutional machinery that the Stavran territory maintained for decisions of this magnitude. The proposal was the product of 11 months of analysis, negotiation, and the particular comprehensive assessment that the territory applied to the selection of a queen whose position would affect the governance, the alliances, and the specific institutional trajectory of a territory that valued strategic planning above most other qualities. The proposed bride was Katrian Oldenburg. Katrian Oldenburg was the daughter of the Oldenburg family, the specific dynastic house whose bloodline the council's assessment had identified as the optimal match for the Veronin line. The Oldenburg bloodline carried the particular genetic and political qualities that the council's metrics valued: territorial influence, diplomatic connections, the specific historical pedigree that 7 generations of strategic marriages had produced, and that the council's analysis classified as the highest value bloodline available. Katrian herself was. Hadrian had met her 4 times during the negotiation period, and had found her to be the specific quality of person the analysis predicted. Intelligent, composed, carrying the particular social competence that the Oldenburg family's training produced. She was appropriate. The word appropriate was the council's highest assessment, and the word was accurate, and the accuracy was sufficient for the governance's purposes. Hadrian did not love her. This was not required. The governance did not require love. The governance required the Crown's resonance. The Crown's resonance required whatever the Crown measured, which was not love, which was the territory's essence, which was a concept the theology described with language that was more poetic than precise, and that 700 years of kings had experienced as the artifact either vibrating or not. The declaration ceremony was scheduled for the spring equinox, which was the traditional date for mate declarations. The ceremony was formal. The king placed the crown on his head, declared his chosen mate, and the crown either resonated or did not. 700 years of declarations had produced an approval rate of approximately 80%. The specific historical evidence that the Crown was generally agreeable, but not universally so, that the Crown had denied proposals before, and that the denials were the specific institutional mechanism by which the theology maintained its authority over the king's personal life. The ceremony was prepared. The hall was arranged. 300 wolves were present. Catrian Aldenburg was present, positioned at the hall's ceremonial station in the specific place that the tradition designated for the proposed mate. Hadrian placed the crown on his head. He declared Catrian Aldenburg as his chosen mate. The crown was silent. Chapter 2. The silence was comprehensive. Not the quiet of a crowd waiting for the vibration, the specific internal silence of the artifact itself, the particular quality of a crown that had been presented with a proposal and that was producing nothing in response. No hum, no vibration, the specific flat quality of an object that was declining to participate. Hadrian felt the silence in his skull, the specific absence of the resonance he had expected, the particular sensation of wearing an artifact that was choosing not to respond. The silence was not ambiguous. The silence was the crown's specific, clear, unequivocal denial of the proposal. The hall processed the silence. 300 wolves processing the specific institutional evidence that the crown had rejected the Aldenburg proposal. The 11 months of analysis, the strategic planning, the particular comprehensive assessment that had produced the proposal, through the mechanism of simply not vibrating. Catrian Aldenburg stood at the ceremonial station with the specific composure of a woman whose 11 months of preparation had just been denied by an artifact, and whose composure was the particular quality that the Aldenburg training had prepared her for, the management of public situations that did not produce the expected outcome. Lord Ackerman, the council's senior advisor, looked at the crown with the expression of a man whose 11 months of strategic analysis had just been overruled by a piece of metal. "The crown has declined," the ceremonial officiant said. The specific formal language that the tradition required, the officiant's acknowledgement that the artifact had spoken through its silence, and that the speaking was authoritative. Hadrian removed the crown. The removal was the specific procedural response that a denial required. The king removing the artifact, the ceremony concluding, the proposal returning to the status of unconfirmed. The hall dispersed. The dispersal had the particular quality of an institution processing a significant failure, the specific collective adjustment of 300 wolves revising their expectations and beginning the institutional work of determining what happened next. What happened next was the specific thing that the crown's denial had always produced in the territory's history. The question, if not this one, then who? Chapter 3. The council convened the following morning with the specific urgency that a crown denial produced, the particular institutional velocity of a governing body whose 11-month strategy had failed and whose failure required immediate analysis. "The crown denied the Aldenburg proposal," Lord Ackerman said, opening the session with the specific efficiency of a man who preferred to state the obvious quickly, so that the session could move past the obvious to the actionable. "The denial is the crown's prerogative. The crown's prerogative is not appealable. The question is, what quality did the crown find absent in the Aldenburg match?" This was the council's approach: analytical, diagnostic, the specific institutional response of people who treated the crown's denial as a data point rather than a judgment, and who intended to refine their analysis based on the data point's information. "The Aldenburg bloodline is the highest value available," the diplomatic advisor said. The analysis was comprehensive. The match's strategic value was optimal. "The crown does not measure strategic value," said Priestess Ilyana, whose position on the council was the specific theological representation that the crown's function required. Ilyana was 61, had been studying the crown's behavior for 30 years, and had the particular quality of a woman whose professional relationship was with an artifact rather than an institution, and who found the institution's analysis of the artifact consistently insufficient. "The crown measures the territory's essence," Ilyana said. "The essence is not strategic value. The essence is the specific quality that the territory requires in its queen, not what the council values, but what the territory needs." "The territory needs the Aldenburg alliance," Ackerman said. "The territory needs what the crown says the territory needs," Ilyana said. The Crown has said the territory does not need the Oldenburg alliance. The Crown has said this through the specific mechanism of not vibrating. The not vibrating is the data. The data supersedes the analysis. The Council debated. The debate had the specific quality of an institution arguing with a theology about whose authority governed the decision. The particular institutional tension between the Council's analytical approach and the Crown's non-analytical approach that every Crown denial produced. Hadrian listened to the debate. He did not participate. The debate was the Council's function, and his function was the assessment of the debate's conclusions. He listened, and he thought about the silence. The silence had felt. He examined the sensation with the specific attention that the sensation warranted. Deliberate. Not the passive absence of vibration, but the active quality of an artifact choosing silence over resonance. The Crown had not been uncertain. The Crown had been clear. The Crown knows, he said, interrupting the debate. The Council looked at him. The Crown knows who the territory needs, he said. The Crown denied Oldenburg because Oldenburg is not the answer. The Crown has the answer. The question is how the Crown communicates the answer when the Crown's communication is binary, resonance, or silence. The Crown communicates through the declaration, Ilyana said. The King declares. The Crown responds. The response is the communication. The declaration requires the King to propose a specific person, Hadrian said. The Crown responds to the specific person proposed. If the King does not propose the correct person, the Crown denies. The system requires the King to identify the answer before the Crown can confirm it. The system requires the King to keep proposing until the Crown agrees, Ackerman said. The system requires the King to find the person the Crown is looking for, Hadrian said, without the Crown telling the King who the person is. The Council absorbed this. The specific institutional quality of a governing body, recognizing that the artifact they depended on for the territory's most significant decision was operating as a confirmation mechanism rather than a selection mechanism, and that the confirmation required the King to identify the answer through means other than the Crown's guidance. Then we broaden the analysis, Ackerman said. The Oldenburg match was optimized for strategic value. The Crown rejected strategic value. We re-optimize for different criteria. Which criteria? The diplomatic advisor said. The Crown's criteria, Ackerman said. Whatever the Crown measures. The Crown measures the territory's essence, Ilyana repeated. The essence is not something the analysis can optimize for, because the essence is not something the analysis understands. Then how do we find the person? Ackerman said. Ilyana looked at the Council. We don't, she said. The King does. Chapter 4. Hadrian began looking. Not through the Council's machinery, through the specific personal quality of a man walking through his territory and paying the particular kind of attention that the Crown's denial had told him the Council's analytical approach could not provide. The Council measured what the Council could measure. The Crown measured something else. The something else required the specific quality of seeing that measurement did not produce. He walked the stronghold. He walked the grounds. He walked the territory's settlements and markets, and the specific public spaces where the territory's population lived and worked and existed in the particular way that populations existed, individually, each wolf carrying the specific quality that their life had produced, and that the Crown might or might not recognize as the territory's essence. He did not know what he was looking for. This was the specific difficulty of a search whose criteria were undefined. The particular challenge of a man trying to find a person based on a quality he could not describe, and that an artifact had declined to explain. He looked anyway. He looked at the wolves he passed. He looked for the thing, the specific undefined quality that the Crown measured, and that the Crown's silence had told him the Oldenburg match did not possess. He looked for 3 weeks. On the 3rd week, he found it in the kitchen. Chapter 5. Sable Jourdain was the stronghold's morning baker. The morning baker was the specific position in the kitchen's hierarchy that produced the stronghold's bread. the daily output that 400 wolves consumed, and that the morning baker produced between 3 a.m. and 7 a.m., with the particular solitary quality of a person whose work happened while the building slept. She was 25, Omega ranked, and had been baking in the Stronghold's kitchen for 6 years. She had come through the service intake, the specific institutional channel that the Stronghold used for positions that required skill but not pedigree, the particular entry point for wolves whose families did not carry the bloodline connections that the court's positions required. Hadrian had not met her before. The king did not meet morning bakers. The morning baker's schedule and the king's schedule did not intersect, because the morning baker worked while the king slept, and the king worked while the morning baker slept, and the two existences occupied the same building without occupying the same hours. He met her because he could not sleep. The denial was 3 weeks old. The not sleeping had begun approximately 2 weeks ago, the specific insomnia that the denial produced in a man whose mind was searching for something, and whose searching did not pause for the sleeping hours. He was awake at 4 a.m. He was in the corridor. The corridor led to the kitchen. The kitchen contained the smell of bread. He followed the smell because the smell was the only thing at 4 a.m. that was not the searching. She was at the ovens, the specific professional environment of a baker at work. The flour, the dough, the particular rhythm of a person whose hands were in the bread, and whose attention was in the bread, and whose quality was the specific focused care that the bread's production required. She did not hear him enter. The oven's heat and the dough's demands, and the particular focused quality of a baker at 4 a.m. produced the specific sensory environment in which an entering king was not a registered event. He stood in the kitchen doorway and he watched her work. The watching produced something. Not a thought, a feeling. The specific quality of a man whose crown had denied his proposal and whose searching had been running for 3 weeks, and whose searching, in the specific moment of watching a woman bake bread at 4 a.m., with the particular focused care of someone whose work was a form of attention, stopped. The searching stopped because the searching had found something. He did not know what the something was. He knew the feeling, the specific sensation of a search resolving, the particular quality of a man's attention settling on something after 3 weeks of moving and finding the settling produce the same quality of certainty that he had expected the crown's resonance to produce for the Aldenburg proposal, and that the crown had not produced because the crown was looking for this. This. A woman baking bread. The specific focused quality of hands in dough. The particular care of a person whose work happened in the hours when no one was watching, and whose work was therefore the specific unperformed quality of someone who worked because the work mattered, and not because the working was seen. She turned from the oven and saw him. The seeing produced the specific rapid assessment of a person encountering someone unexpected in their workspace, the particular quality of a woman at 4 a.m. in a kitchen finding the king in her doorway, and processing the finding with the specific composure of someone whose professional schedule had not included this event. "Your Majesty," she said. "The bread," he said. "The morning loaves," she said. "They'll be ready at 6. "I can smell them." "The smell is the yeast," she said. "The proving produces the specific aroma that precedes the baking. The aroma is the yeast's output during the fermentation, the particular biochemical process that makes the dough rise. You describe baking like a science." "Baking is a science," she said. "The fermentation is chemistry. The kneading is physics. The timing is mathematics. The result is the specific product of all three applied correctly." He looked at the bread, at the dough, at the ovens and the flour, and the specific professional environment of a woman whose work was the daily production of something essential through the particular quality of focused care. "I'm Hadrian," he said. "I know who you are," she said. "You're the king who cannot sleep." "How do you know I cannot sleep?" "You are in my kitchen at 4 a.m., she said. "The options are you cannot sleep or you are very enthusiastic about bread. I am selecting the more probable option." He sat on the kitchen stool, the specific piece of furniture that the kitchen provided for the baker's rest intervals, and that the king of the territory had never previously occupied. "I cannot sleep," he said. "The bread will not help with that," she said. "The bread will be ready at 6. If you want to wait for bread that will not help you sleep, you are welcome to wait in my kitchen." He waited. Chapter 6. He came back the following morning, and the morning after. The 4 a.m. visits became the specific pattern of a man whose insomnia had found a destination, and whose destination was a kitchen where a woman baked bread with the particular quality of focused care that the searching had identified as the thing the Crown was looking for. He did not tell her about the Crown. He did not tell her about the searching, or the denial, or the specific quality that the 4 a.m. watching produced. He came to the kitchen. He sat on the stool. He watched her bake. They talked. The talking was the education. Not his education of her education of him, conducted through the specific medium of bread and the particular quality of a woman whose attention to her craft produced, in the explaining, an attention to him that the Council's strategic analysis had never replicated. She told him about bread, about the specific quality of attention that bread required, the particular patience of fermentation, the precise timing of proving, the specific physical knowledge of dough that the baker's hands developed over years of contact. She told him about the starter, the living culture that had been maintained for 4 years, fed daily, the specific ongoing quality of a relationship between a baker and a biological system that the baker maintained through the particular consistent care that the system's survival required. The starter is alive, she said. The starter requires attention every day. The starter does not take days off. The starter does not accommodate the baker's schedule. The baker accommodates the starter. You accommodate the starter, he said. I serve the starter, she said. The starter produces the bread. The bread feeds 400 wolves. The chain is, my service produces the starter's function, produces the bread's existence, produces the territory's nutrition. Every link is necessary. Remove my service, and the chain breaks. He looked at the starter, the specific small container of living culture that the baker maintained daily with the particular care of a person whose attention to a tiny thing produced the specific essential output that 400 people depended on. You serve a jar of yeast, he said. I serve the thing the territory eats, she said. The jar is the mechanism. The service is the quality. The quality is what matters. He looked at her. At the woman whose 4 a.m. work was the specific invisible foundation of the stronghold's daily function, and whose invisibility was the particular quality that the Crown was looking for. The quality of service that happened without performance, without audience, without the specific social machinery that the court's hierarchy maintained for the recognition of contribution. She worked without recognition. She worked because the work was essential. She worked at 4 a.m. because 4 a.m. was when the bread required her. The Crown measured the territory's essence. The territory's essence was, he understood it now, in the specific clarity that 3 weeks of searching and 2 weeks of 4 a.m. kitchens produced, service. Not strategic value, not bloodline pedigree, not the specific institutional qualities that the Council's analysis measured. Service. The particular quality of a person whose work was essential and whose work was performed without the expectation of recognition, because the recognition was not why the work was done. Sable, he said. She was shaping loaves. The specific rhythmic motion of hands that had been shaping dough for 6 years, and that performed the shaping with the particular automated quality of a skill that the body maintained independently of the mind's attention. Yes, she said. I need to tell you something. The bread will be ready at 6, she said. You have 2 hours. He told her. The Crown, the resonance, the denial, the specific quality that the Crown measured, the territory's essence, and the specific failure of the Oldenburg proposal and the 3 weeks of searching, and the specific moment in the kitchen doorway when the searching had stopped. She listened. She continued shaping loaves while she listened because the bread required the shaping, and the shaping was not something she stopped for conversations, even conversations about crowns. You believe the Crown is looking for me, she said. I believe the Crown is looking for the quality you carry, he said. The specific quality of service without performance. The particular care that happens at 4 a.m. without an audience. I am a baker, she said. The Crown does not measure profession, he said. The Crown measures quality. The quality is the specific attention you bring to the work, the care, the consistency, the particular daily renewal of a relationship with a living thing that depends on your attention. She looked at the starter, at the small container that held the living culture she maintained daily. The crown is an artifact, she said. I am a person. The artifact's measurement of me is the artifact's function. My response to the measurement is my decision. Your response, he said. You are telling me that the king's crown might choose me as the queen, she said. You are telling me this in my kitchen at 4:30 in the morning, while I am shaping bread. The specific context of the telling is unusual. The specific context is the context where you are most yourself, he said. The context where the quality the crown measures is most visible. You are not performing for me. You are baking bread. The baking is the quality. She set down the dough. She looked at him with the specific attention of a woman whose professional quality was the focused care of living things, and who was now directing that focused care at the man sitting on her kitchen stool, telling her that an ancient artifact might want her. The crown might not resonate, she said. The crown might not resonate, he agreed. And if it does not, then I have spent 3 weeks of insomnia finding a baker, and the finding is its own value, regardless of the crown's opinion. She looked at the bread, at the starter, at the specific professional environment that 4 a.m. provided, the particular quality of a space where 2 people were having a conversation that would change one or both of their lives, and where the bread still needed to be shaped because the bread did not accommodate the conversation's significance. Shape the loaves first, she said. Then we talk about crowns. He shaped loaves. She taught him. The specific hands-on instruction of a baker teaching a king how to handle dough, the particular professional guidance that the teaching required, and that the king received with the specific focused attention of a man whose institutional training had not included bread-making and whose 4 a.m. education was expanding rapidly. His loaves were uneven. Her loaves were precise. The difference was 6 years of practice, which was the specific gap between a king's hands and a baker's hands, and which the bread made visible. The bread does not care about your rank, she said, looking at his uneven loaves. The bread cares about the hands, he said. The bread cares about the attention, she said. The hands are the mechanism. The attention is the quality. Chapter 7. The declaration was held at the summer solstice, not the spring equinox. The traditional date had passed with the Audiobook denial, and the searching, and the 3 weeks in the 4 a.m. kitchens. The summer solstice was the next available ceremonial date, which the tradition permitted for mate declarations that the equinox had not resolved. The hall was arranged. 300 wolves were present. The council was present. Priestess Ilyana was present with the specific quality of a theologian who had been studying the crown for 30 years, and who was about to witness something her studying had prepared her for, but that her preparation had not predicted. Catrian Aldenburg was not present. Catrian had returned to the Aldenburg holdings after the denial with the specific diplomatic grace that the situation required, and the returning had been managed with the particular institutional efficiency that both families' governance provided. Sable Jourdain was present. She was standing at the ceremonial station, the specific position that the proposed mate occupied. She was wearing the ceremonial garment that the tradition prescribed, which was the most formal thing she had worn in her life, and which she wore with the particular quality of a woman who was accustomed to wearing flower-covered aprons, and who found the ceremonial garment significantly less practical, but was willing to manage the impracticality for the duration. Hadrian placed the crown on his head. I declare Sable Jourdain as my chosen mate, he said. The crown resonated. The resonance was not the standard vibration, not the specific low hum that most declarations produced, the particular agreeable quality of an artifact confirming a governance decision. This resonance was, the hall felt it. Not heard it, felt it. The resonance moved through the room the way the war banner's light had moved through the valley, not as sound, but as transmission. The specific quality of an artifact producing its output at a level that exceeded the artifact's normal operating range. The crown was not agreeing. The crown was celebrating. The resonance filled the hall. The specific quality of vibration that 300 wolves felt in their bones, the particular comprehensive response of an artifact whose 700-year function had been designed for exactly this moment, and whose moment had arrived in the form of a morning baker whose quality was the focused care of living things. Hadrian felt the resonance in his skull, not the standard confirmation, the specific, full expression of the crown's approval, the particular quality of an artifact saying yes with the comprehensive intensity that the artifact had been saving for the specific person whose quality matched the territory's essence completely. Sable felt it too. Not through the crown, through the air. The specific quality of the resonance reaching the proposed mate and producing the particular response that the theology described as the mutual recognition. The crown recognizing the mate recognizing the crown, the specific bilateral quality of an artifact and a person confirming each other. The hall was silent in the particular way that 300 wolves were silent when they were feeling something that exceeded their capacity for sound. Ilyana was the first to speak. "The crown has chosen," she said. The specific formal language, delivered with the particular quality of a theologian, witnessing the most comprehensive resonance in the crown's documented history. "The crown has chosen the morning baker," Ackerman said. The specific flat delivery of a man whose 11 months of strategic analysis had been overridden by an artifact's preference for a woman who maintained a yeast culture. "The crown has chosen the quality the territory needs," Ilyana said. "The quality is not bloodline. The quality is not strategy. The quality is the specific focused care that sustains living things through daily attention, without the expectation of recognition." "Service," Hadrian said. "Service," Ilyana confirmed. "The territory's essence is service. The crown has been measuring for service for 700 years. The crown found service in a kitchen at 4 a.m. Chapter 8. The court adjusted. The adjustment had the specific institutional quality of a system accommodating something its categories did not contain. A queen whose previous position was morning baker, whose professional skill was bread, whose specific quality was the focused care of a yeast culture maintained daily for 4 years. The adjustment was not seamless. The court's categories were built on bloodline and strategy, and the specific institutional metrics that the Aldenburg match had been optimized for. Sable did not fit the categories. The not fitting was the specific quality that the crown had chosen, the particular quality of a person whose contribution existed outside the institution's measurement system, and whose outsideness was the thing the territory needed. She continued baking. This was her specific condition, the non-negotiable quality of a woman whose professional identity was the work, and whose work was not something she was willing to surrender because the crown had chosen her. She baked at 4 a.m. She maintained the starter. She produced the bread that fed the stronghold. The court found this unusual. The court found many things about their new queen unusual. The flour on her hands at council sessions. The specific quality of a woman who excused herself from diplomatic meetings because the proving window was closing, and the dough did not accommodate diplomatic timelines. Hadrian did not find it unusual. Hadrian found it essential. The specific quality that the crown had identified, and that the crown's comprehensive resonance had confirmed. The quality was the focused care. The care required the baking. The baking required the 4 a.m. hours. Remove the baking, and you removed the quality. Remove the quality, and you removed the thing the crown had chosen. "The queen bakes bread," Ackerman said in a council session. The specific tone of a man who had been adjusting for 3 months, and whose adjustment was proceeding at a pace his dignity managed. "The queen maintains the territory's essence," Ilyana said. "The crown confirmed the essence. The essence is expressed through the service. The service is expressed through the bread. The chain is intact." "The chain includes flour at council meetings," Ackerman said. "The chain includes everything," Ilyana said, "including the council's discomfort with a queen who does not match the council's categories." Sable looked at the council from her position at the council table, the position she had occupied for 3 months with the specific quality of a woman who was not performing the position, but inhabiting it. the particular quality of someone whose daily 4 a.m. work had produced the focused attention that the council's deliberations benefited from. "The starter requires feeding at 6, she said. "The council has 45 minutes. The council had 45 minutes. The council learned to have 45 minutes. The council learned that the specific quality of focused governance that 45-minute sessions produced was superior to the quality that 3-hour sessions produced because the focus was compressed and the compression eliminated the particular institutional padding that 3-hour sessions contained. The territory's governance improved. Not because the Queen was brilliant at governance, though her focused quality produced specific improvements in the council's efficiency, because the Queen's quality was the territory's essence, and the essence, present at the council table, produced the specific quality that the Crown had been measuring for 700 years, and that the territory had been needing without knowing it needed it. Service, the focused care of living things through daily attention, without the expectation of recognition. The quality that happened at 4 a.m., the quality that no one saw. The quality that fed 400 wolves and maintained a living culture and shaped loaves with hands that had been practicing for 6 years, and that performed the shaping with the specific care that the Crown had recognized as the most important thing in the territory. Epilogue. She baked at 4 a.m. every morning. Queen or not, the baking was first. The baking was the thing. The baking was the specific daily act of service that the Crown had chosen, and that the choosing did not change because the choosing was the confirmation of the act rather than the transformation of it. Hadrian woke at 4. This had become his pattern, the specific adjusted schedule of a man whose insomnia had been resolved not by sleep, but by purpose. The particular quality of a king who woke at 4, because 4 was when the quality was visible, and the quality was the thing he wanted to see. He sat on the kitchen stool. She baked. The bread took shape under her hands, the specific daily transformation of flour and water, and the living culture she maintained into the thing that the territory ate, and that the territory depended on, and that the territory's Crown had identified as the expression of the territory's essence. "The starter," she said. She was feeding it, the specific daily maintenance of the living culture, the particular careful attention that the culture's survival required. "The starter?" he said. 4 years old, she said. Fed daily. Never missed. The consistency is the thing. The culture responds to consistent care. Inconsistent care produces inconsistent bread. The bread feeds the territory. The territory's nutrition depends on my consistency. The territory's nutrition, he said. And everything that depends on the nutrition, she said. The wolves who eat the bread. The work they do after eating. The governance they produce. The borders they defend, the families they maintain, all of it downstream from a jar of yeast that I feed every morning at 6. "You see the chain?" he said. "I see the service," she said. "The service is the chain. Every link is necessary. Every link is maintained by the specific quality of daily care that the link requires." She looked at the starter. The Crown saw this. The Crown resonated because the Crown recognized the quality that maintains the chain. He looked at the bread, at the starter, at the woman whose hands were in the dough, and whose attention was in the work, and whose quality was the specific thing that 700 years of an artifact's measurement had been designed to find. The Crown sat in the ceremonial vault between declarations. The Crown was silent, which was its resting state. The Crown would resonate again, at the next significant declaration, at the next governance decision that required confirmation. The Crown would vibrate or not vibrate based on the specific quality it measured. But the Crown's most comprehensive resonance, the specific full expression that the hall had felt in its bones, had been produced by a morning baker. The resonance had been the Crown's celebration. The celebration had been the artifact's recognition that the thing it had been measuring for 700 years had walked into its presence in the form of a woman with flour on her hands and a